Thank you. And just to also note that Councillor Brock McGregor is also on the call. The land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are on the lands of Anishinaabe Nation. This spot where we gather is the traditional lands of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ottawa, Potawatomi, Ojibwe. We also recognize that this land is now home to the Delaware Nation. This land was settled through the McKee Purchase Treaty of 1790, and we, as beneficiaries of the treaty, must recognize our responsibilities, including our collective responsibilities to the land and water. There are no supplementary agenda items this evening, and we do have three disclosures of pecuniary interest. We have two with item 11C, the application for consent for Ford Brothers Investment by Councillor Story and Councillor Doyle. And we also have a conflict of interest on 11D, application for consent and zoning bylaw amendment for Ryan and Brendan Boyd by Councillor Story. Moving on to planning services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The process to be followed for each planning application will be as follows. 1, the clerk will announce each individual planning item. 2, the mayor will ask if there is anyone present other than the applicant or their agent with an interest in the application and to indicate so by raising their hand. 3, the clerk will advise if anyone is present virtually wishing to speak to the application or if written or video submissions have been received. 4, if someone other than the applicant or the applicant's agent indicates an interest in the item, there will be a presentation by administration. 5, individuals with an interest in the application other than the applicant will be asked to proceed to the podium, provide their name and address, and address council. 6, the applicant will be asked if they wish to proceed to the podium and address council. 7, administration will be asked if they have any comments based on any discussion that may have occurred. And 8, council will be asked what action it wishes to take with regard to the item. Notice, if any person or public body that files an appeal of a decision of council in respect of the proposed applications does not make oral or written submissions to the municipal clerk of the municipality before the proposal is approved, they are not entitled to appeal a decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal if otherwise eligible, unless in the opinion of the tribunal there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as party to the appeal. Information on council's actions tonight will be posted on the municipal website. All persons who have made a request or who have made an oral or written submission regarding a particular planning item will receive a notice of council's decision, including appeal procedures. Any other person who wishes to receive a notice of decision must submit a written request to the municipal clerk. Thank you.
Just a reminder for anyone doing deputations this evening, I would like to remind all individuals of some guidelines for participation. For those who are joining us in person, please proceed to the podium when you are called upon to speak. You will have 5 minutes to speak, and there will be a timer on the screen. If you conduct yourself in any of the following manners, it will result in immediate removal from the meeting. Interrupting councillors, staff, or other speakers, derogatory statements about councillors, staff, or others, hate speech or defamatory comments. The use of poster, signage, or literature is also prohibited. One last reminder for speakers, please do not take offense if following your presentation there are no questions from council. This is council's time to really listen and reflect upon the opinions and ideas shared with us from our community members. We'll move on to our first application for planning, number 11A, Wallaceburg Southside Neighborhood Secondary Plan. And we have a presentation from the consultant in which Ryan will introduce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So for many years now, there's been a good interest in the community of Wallaceburg to intervene with a land use planning project in the Southside neighborhood. The Southside neighborhood of Wallaceburg is in the downtown core of the town on the south bank of the Sydenham River. This area over the last several decades has declined in its vitality and its overall contribution to the town of Wallaceburg and the municipality of Chatham-Kent. In 2021, Municipal Council gave direction to administration to embark on a comprehensive land use study, which is called the Secondary Plan. So over the last year and a half or so, municipal administration, also with the help of a professional consultant, has worked diligently to prepare a conceptual or draft land use plan, which will be presented to council tonight. And along the way, at various milestones, there was quite a lot of engagement with people in Wallaceburg. And part of that engagement process actually included an open house that was held in the atrium of the Civic Center tonight. And I know there was some concern from Wallaceburg residents why that open house had not been held in Wallaceburg. And really the reason for that is that we're here tonight to present this plan to council, and all of the professional staff were in Chatham. We were at the Civic Center, and this was actually an additional opportunity to be available for the public to chat about the plan as an additional engagement opportunity. And that was really the reason why this wasn't happening in Wallaceburg, but rather right here in this building. So it is my pleasure to introduce Ute Maya Giambattista. Ute is a professional land use planner with a company called FO10 Planning and Design. FO10, in partnership with TY Lin Engineering, were retained to provide additional support on this project. And Ute is here, and she will make the presentation to council. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night. Once again, my name is Ute Maya Giambattista. Thank you so much for scheduling an update on the secondary plan. So let me get this right. As Ryan explained, we are a team of consultants from FO10 Planning and Design working on the land use planning, TY Lin supporting us on servicing engineering and transportation planning, as well as a wonderful team here at Chatham-Kent. Tonight's agenda will basically provide you with a brief overview of the work we have been conducting for a year. It's a process overview, what we have heard, a draft official plan amendment, snippets of what's included in that document, and next steps. So, as Ryan explained, the planning area is demarcated by the river to the south, to the north, McNaughton Avenue to the west, the railway to the south, Murray Street to the east. It has about 22 hectares in size. It's about 410 residents. It has a full mix of residential, commercial, institutional, and recreational uses, and former industrial uses next to the railway. It has been historically part of the downtown area, Wallaceburg downtown area. It has experienced a decline in the last 70 years. You can see a lot of vacant land. The businesses and industries left the area. And the whole reason for the secondary plan is to really start thinking how to revitalize the community. So a secondary plan is a land use planning and policy document or tool that you have available as a municipality to adapt and implement the objectives that you have implemented through your official plan. Establishes the land use policies that allows for future improvements to take place, whether it's public or private. It promotes a desired type of form and vision that is developed for that specific area, and it guides public and private development and investment. So the final documents that are usually produced in this sort of report or study is an official plan amendment in the form of policies that go into your secondary plan, a concept report that's already in draft form on the website, and finally goes through an adoption process, hopefully in the fall, where council is asked to consider the item being brought forward. So a study of this nature is usually four phases with a startup, background information and analysis phase, draft concept report where you develop the vision in collaboration with the community, the draft of policies, which is the stage we are at, and then eventually the adoption. What is important to know through the stars that you see on the screen is that throughout each phase it's important to have a really good communication and exchange with local stakeholders and the community. So you can see there have been a series of interviews and open houses and workshops that have been implemented throughout all the phases to ensure that there is an actual collaboration with the community. So what we have heard through that engagement process is that in a nutshell, the community wanted to keep the bridge open for pedestrian circulation to have access to the downtown area. They wanted to see the water edge re-explore and re-examine and have access to it. And they really wanted to have an encouragement and support for the arts and culture amenities that exist already in the area that may also benefit the north side of Wallaceburg. So all in all, to kind of create that synergy with Main Street and bring in a series of uses that don't compete with Main Street, but really kind of built on Main Street. From our own research and collaboration with the municipal staff, we know that population is growing. There's a unit need of almost 600 units in the community. There is a shortage of affordable housing, and there is obviously an aging population that's across the province or the country, I may say. So through the collaboration and consultation with the public, we have drafted a concept plan, a vision that includes a vision statement up to 2046, which is the time or horizon of the current official plan, 3 main guiding principles, 29 objectives, 5 structures I will walk you through, and a series of policies that support that implementation. So the vision is quite long, but an excerpt that I really feel encompasses what the community and municipal staff wants to see in the area is a secondary plan and vision as a welcoming, revitalized, attractive, and safe part of Wallaceburg's community core that complements and supports the north side of downtown while offering a distinct amenities and experiences for residents and visitors. The principles that guide this vision is sustainability, to ensure that you're making an efficient use of land that meet current and future residents' needs, a complete community where you, as much as possible, ensure that there is a mix of land, of uses, of building typologies and amenities from the open space perspective that encourage people using within these spaces within the community, and obviously inclusivity, that it's a place that attracts people from A to 80, and they're able to experience and walk within and stay within the community. So the structures developed to implement the vision, the physical or the graphic expression of this series of principles and vision, is encompassed in 4 structures, actually 5 structures. So the first one, which was a kind of the fulcrum of what we wanted to implement and really responding to the public sentiment, was to create a series of amenity activity areas that really capitalize on the wonderful setting of the river. So we have 5 different kind of activity nodes, A and B being the future park right next to the waterfront, with B being a future institutional community amenity area that kind of creates that center node. C and D is the current museum, former current theater, but museum with the park that can also look into how in the future it contributes to that nodality of arts and culture, supporting the park and leading into the bridge into the main street. And then in the future, whenever development occurs on the railroad lands, a future open space activity center that caters to future residents or future uses. From the parkland structure, we envision a waterfront plan, park that will need to go through its own process, and I will take you quickly through the implementation action plans that we have drafted through this process. Promenade that's along the entirety of the remaining of the river lands. It's open to the public, and obviously pedestrian access of that, it also envisions the future extension of Herbert Street into the future development of that triangular piece of land along the railroad lands. And it really kind of tries to connect a series of open spaces that create kind of a circuit that are used to by local residents. The municipality is in the process of settling land acquisitions and in the process of implementing the park along the water. Some ideas and precedents. Once again, the park plan will have to go through its own stakeholders meetings and an RFP called for a landscape architect. But through our meetings, there were many different amenities that people wants to see built in the area, anything from skating rinks to an amphitheater. I think at the time you actually commissioned the plan, that's when the landscape architect will be able to kind of fit and determine how much of this series of amenities can actually fit in the land. The other key kind of aspect of the frameworks developed was the mobility. And I think the fulcrum of this was to reconfigure and restudy the intersection of King, Herbert, and Wallace to streamline the intersection of King and Wallace and really kind of ensure that or transfer that segment of Wallace between Bridge and the intersection at King as a pedestrianized section that's really kind of a spillover for the future park. It can be still used by cars, delivery, and emergency service vehicles, but really it's a redundancy, and it can really have a completely different treatment. It can be integrated into the future design of the park, and it really kind of enhances or enlarges the park area. It looks at pedestrianizing that component. It looks at creating a sort of a elbow at Bridge and Wallace Street that maybe can be a one-way or two ways, or completely close off at Murray, citing concerns with the intersection and visibility from the bridge. And then eventually in the future extending Herbert Street as redevelopment of the triangular piece takes place. As far as future development, there is a vision to allow for a balance of public open space and development along the waterfront. That's fronting onto a public promenade, and in C and B, you see on the graphic. We also have A as a future community amenity building that can incorporate anything from a library or a community facility. D continues to function in its current shape and form, but it has policies that allows to have laneway units or garden suites, and allows those property owners to develop or complement their units. E, it's a small little parcel for housing and seniors' homes by the municipality. And F is a potential range of uses, anything from residential that can be developed by the landowners, or the policy put forward has provisions for flexibility where you can bring in recreational uses should the residential uses not be suitable to the area. So all in all, the main plans that get added to the official plan are a land use plan, like the one you have in front of you, where you see the areas in purple continue to be downtown areas, currently as land use designated as such. A formalizes the use of the museum as a downtown area, so it will go from residential to an actual downtown area to formalize its use. B will go from downtown to residential to further encourage residential development along that area. And D goes from employment to residential with a flex policy to allow for recreational in the future. So all in all, next steps will be to summarize input received through this public meeting and online survey. we will finalize the concept report, and then in the fall, it's intent to bring all the final documents through an open house and a statutory public meeting and a potential adoption of the OPA by municipal council. Some elements that we wanted to leave with you that we identify in collaboration with the municipal staff as priorities is to create a CKA cross-departmental implementation plan to establish department leads as you move into implementing this important piece of revitalization. Amend the zoning bylaw, that will be another big aspect to really reflect the residential uses that are being proposed and unlocking the future redevelopment of the area. Complete the waterfront land acquisition process that's currently in place, create a cross-sectoral advisory committee to oversee the waterfront park master plan process. So that's anybody from anything from arts and culture, heritage, indigenous groups, business, recreation, residents, and to do so through an RFP or a design competition, whatever the municipality chooses to do. Undertake engineering feasibility studies, focus on the realignment of King Street, initiate heritage building evaluation of and designation process of the buildings that we have identified as good candidates for heritage registries. Through new policy, provincial policy, there's only 2 years to designate heritage buildings. And then identifying external funding opportunities as you move forward and try to balance budgets and implement a wonderful waterfront park. So those are, I would say, just a fraction of the series of the recommendations that will be put forward in the final report. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you.
Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing the report and for spending time with Councillor Hall and I the other day to go over the plan before bringing your report tonight, and for the open house. I know there was some confusion about the process, and this is a planning meeting, so and it needs to come in front of council, and we have it here tonight. But happy to see that it's to this point and that we can now move forward and take what we can from this, and if it's an advisory group or whatever council decides to move forward with, to actually begin to change and revitalize the south side of our community in Wallaceburg. And I know Councillor Hall has some other words, so I won't say what he already told me he was going to say. So.
Councillor Hall.
Thanks.
Thank you. No, thank you. I agree with Councillor McGregor. It's been a pleasure working with you, Yuta, and your whole team throughout this whole process. It's been, I think Ryan mentioned it during his opening comments, that this it's been a long time coming for this part of our community to start looking at revitalizing it. And I think the word was put in your presentation about vitality. It's going to be nice to bring it back to that back to that point. So I'm really looking forward to the next steps. But I guess I do have one question. I know right now we're going to approve like the draft concept, but it's going to be back in the fall. But I guess is there opportunity? It's a big document, a lot of big ideas, a lot of reading, I guess, for the public and for council and for everyone. But is there opportunity, before the fall, for people still to provide comment and provide, or ask questions or that sort of thing? Can people still be involved throughout before we get to the fall? I guess. Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, certainly. I think as evident in our engagement, what we heard, Paige, we have made a point of having every opportunity to touch base with the community. So the website with both information, the draft OPA as well as the concept report, have been uploaded to the website, and it has a comment box open to the end of August. Hopefully, we'll check in then with Ryan to see if it has been enough time, given vacation and whatnot, to make sure that we encompass everybody's comments, and at which point we will send kind of one last reminder to the public to please make sure to comment, and then we will close the commenting period.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And just want to say I appreciate the work that you've done again, and the time and effort you took to meet with some of the stakeholder groups, like the people that were interested. A lot of BIA, and I'll probably forget some, but arts and culture groups and stuff in Wallaceburg. But it's been a great pleasure working with you, and it's a great report. And I'm glad that we're here in the council chambers and all of council can see it. So looking forward to the next steps and moving forward. Thank you.
Councillor Story.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I'm listening to this presentation. I'm feeling kind of jealous of the folks in Ward 5. This is really exciting. I am really encouraged to hear this, and thanks, Uta, for your presentation. I'm also really excited to see arts, culture, and heritage playing a key role in how to revitalize our downtowns and injecting and bringing new energy to our communities. This is a really exciting plan for Wallaceburg. I spend a lot of time in Wallaceburg. I have a close family member there, so I look forward to seeing how this unfolds. And I'd love to see this type of approach to all of our downtown revitalization projects in all of our communities. So great work. Thanks to our municipal team, and looking forward to hearing more as it becomes available. Thank you.
I just had a quick couple comments before I go to this is super exciting, not just for Wallaceburg, for Chatham-Kent. When I look at this plan, people from across Chatham-Kent and the whole region will be able to enjoy this property as when it was developed. And the key here is that this is not just going to be a plan that we look and say, wow, this is a wonderful thing, and put it on the shelf and dust it off every now and look at it. This is going to be a plan that's alive, and we're going to move towards making this happen. So that's why it's really critical as we move forward that we're going to have action plans right out of the gate to start things moving, because certainly this is a long-term plan. This is not going to happen in the next 2 years, all of it. But we can start moving towards that, and it's great having a plan for the whole area that we can strive towards and find funding and do those things. But we'll be very active moving forward with that. So thank you for all the work that's went into this, all the input from everyone that's been involved with giving their thoughts on it. So excited to see that happen. So if there's no other questions, is there any deputations?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did not receive any through email today. Is there anyone present who'd wish to make a deputation on this report? See none, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Seeing none, Councillor C. McGregor and Councillor Hall, can I get you to move this, please?
Certainly.
So second.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor McGrail,
Yes.
Councillor Brock McGregor,
Yes.
and Councillor Finn.
Yes.
Thank you. All votes are in. Motion passes 15-0. Moving on to item 11B, application for zoning bylaw amendment. 21089 Charing Cross Road, Community of Harwich, South Kent. Mr. Mayor, there are no conflict of interest, and I have not received any deputations via email.
Okay. Is there anyone present other than the applicant or the agent with an interest in the application? And to indicate so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, Councillor Sakachi and Councillor Doyle, can I get you to move this, please?
So moved, Mayor Caniff.
Happy to second that.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor McGrail,
Yes.
Councillor Brock McGregor,
Yes.
and Councillor Finn.
Yes.
All votes are in. Almost. Councillor Pinsino is not here. Okay, all votes are in. Motion passes 14-0. 11C, application for consent and zoning bylaw amendment, Ford Brothers Investment, Inc., 29931 Don Mills Road, Community of Camden, East Kent. We have two conflict of interest by Councillor Story and Councillor Doyle, and I have not received any deputations via email.
Is there anyone present other than the applicant and or the agent with an interest in the application? And do indicate so by raising your hand. Seeing none, Councillor Pinsino and Councillor Wright, can I get you to move this, please?
I'll move that, Your Worship.
I'll second it, thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Finn,
Yes.
Councillor McGrail,
Yes.
and Councillor Brock McGregor.
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 13-0. 11D, application for consent and zoning bylaw amendment. Ryan and Brendan Boyd, 12119 Talbot Trail, Community of Howard, East Kent. We have one conflict of interest by Councillor Story, and we have one deputation that was emailed to council earlier from Mr. and Mrs. McKinley, and I believe that there is one that is present, Mr. Mayor. So the first one I have present is Luke Hausman and Jim Brackett will be presenting.
Oops. I'm reading this on behalf of Luke Heisman, who is the landowner bordering on the west side of the Boyd property that has been requested to be severed as per the attached application and key map outlined there within. I strongly oppose the severance application submitted by the landowner for the following reasons. I believe the purpose and intent of the severance as outlined in the application for consent and zoning bylaw amendment is not truthfully and accurately described. Instead, I have significant concern that the true intent of the severance is to develop a severed building lot and access road, as is clearly indicated in the key map of the application, i.e. the proposed severed land includes a section of agricultural land to the northwest with a narrow strip seemingly indicating road access to the northeast. The proposed severed land consists entirely of an open municipal drain, the Ross Drain, and as such has protection of its natural features under the Drainage Act. I am deeply concerned that turning this municipal drain into someone's backyard and personal property will lead to inevitable conflictual interest between this landowner and the landowners that have invested greatly into the Ross Drain and are protected by the Drainage Act. These concerns are exaggerated by the landowner's previous actions of blocking and cementing shut a drain entering the Ross Drain. The key map does not reflect the 30-meter setback that is required. In closing, I want to stress my concern with regards to the application, as I believe it to be deceitful in its purpose and intent and could have detrimental effects to all landowners who drain into it. Thank you for your consideration. Luke Heisman. Thank you.
Is there anyone else present other than the applicant and or the agent with an interest in the application, and do indicate so by raising your hand? Seeing none, Brian, you can do presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will make a brief presentation and just like to point out that the applicant's agent is also present following if they might have any comments. Thank you. The municipality has received applications for consent to sever a new property as well as zoning bylaw amendment. The subject property is along Talbot Trail and consists of approximately 80 acres of land. Approximately 52 acres is cultivated farmland, and the remaining approximately 28 acres consists of land surrounding the Ross Drain, which is wooded area and valley lands. The purpose and effect of the recommendations made recognizing these applications is to recognize the existing natural features for the long term and also maintain the long-term viability of the agricultural lands. This is done by the establishment of implementing appropriate zoning regulations that support public policy objectives. The consent to sever proposal is to sever the agricultural land on a separate 50.8 acre lot. The retained lands would be approximately 28 acres and contain the full extent of the Ross Drain and the surrounding natural wooded and valley lands. The retained lands that contain the natural feature are also proposed to contain approximately 1.8 acres of land that is currently cultivated. And the purpose of this land at the north end of the property would be for the purposes of establishing a building envelope suitable for building a single detached dwelling in the future. The zoning bylaw amendment seeks to apply the local open space zone over the Ross Drain and associated lands to permit conservation uses, and it would also recognize the area for a future dwelling on the lands that are currently in an agricultural use. The severed parcel will remain in an agricultural zone. However, in accordance with municipal and provincial policy, there will be a 30-meter setback from those natural features where no buildings or structures will be permitted. These applications have been evaluated in the context of the Ontario Provincial Policy Statement and the Chatham-Kent Official Plan. The overriding objectives that is supporting this application have regard for both the long-term protection and enhancement of natural heritage features, as well as the protection of the future viability of agricultural lands for the long term. I believe the recommendations meet both of these objectives together. By severing off the natural heritage feature and allowing a dwelling to be built and rezoned to open space, this will further promote the long-term conservation and enhancement of these areas, as well as provide an opportunity for the landowner to reside on site, to enjoy and conserve these lands over the long term. As well, the severed parcel, being the 50-acre agricultural parcel, continues to meet the minimum 50-acre lot size for an agricultural parcel in accordance with the Chatham-Kent zoning bylaw. All other regulatory documents, such as the Drainage Act, as well as any Conservation Authority regulations, will continue apply to this site in the future, just as they currently do today. So overall, this proposal meets the intent of the Chatham-Kent Official Plan and complies with the Ontario Provincial Policy Statement. Therefore, it is recommended that consent application B0423 to sever and convey a new agricultural parcel, approximately 20.55 hectares in area, be approved subject to the conditions noted in the planning report, as well that zoning bylaw application file D14HO0123B be approved and the implementing bylaw be adopted. Thank you.
Councillor Pincinel?
Thank you, Worship. Couple of questions through you. As it stands right now, if the property wasn't severed, he could build a house there if he wanted, correct?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes.
Okay, so the severance has no bearing on whether a house gets built or whether you add a lot in there. Okay, the other question I have, it was mentioned in Mr. Heisman's deputation that he's worried about the drain, the Ross Drain going through there. Through the Drainage Act, does that not supersede anybody blocking the drain, or like they can go right on his property and correct the problem if he creates one?
That's correct. With regard to the Drainage Act and the drainage report for this drain, there would be no change in how that's implemented, whether this drain is part of the farm as it is today or on a separate property.
Okay. But to his concern, he was worried they were going to, because it said he had blocked something else off in the past, and I don't know whether that's fact or not fact, but that can't happen here. And if it does happen, it will be fixed.
That's correct. There's a legal process that would rectify any issues
All right,
such as that.
thank you.
Seeing no other questions there, of the applicant agent, do you wish to share any comments regarding the report or comments that you have heard? No, sir. Okay. Ryan, anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Pincinel and Councillor Wright, can I get you to move this, please?
I'll move it.
I'll second it, thank you.
All right, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Finn,
Yes.
Councillor Brock-McGregor,
Yes.
Councillor McGrail.
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 14-0. 11E, application for official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment 1288038, Ontario Incorporated, Talbot Trail, Community of Harwich, South Kent. Mr. Mayor, there are no conflicts of interest, and we do have one email deputation, so I'll go to administration for a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The subject parcel is approximately 18 acres in area and is comprised of lands which were formerly a aggregate pit for the excavation of aggregates such as sand and gravel. Part of this property back in 2003 was developed into 8 new residential lots fronting Talbot Trail. The current proposal before council tonight is to facilitate new residential development across the east and northwest sides of this property around the pond that is a result of the former mining activity at this location. The applications before council tonight are 2. The first is an official plan amendment. The official plan amendment seeks to change the public policy that applies the land use provisions for this area from agricultural area to suburban residential area. The official plan amendment would then lead to the next application, which is a zoning bylaw amendment, which would seek to regulate the lands for the purposes of allowing future residential uses and also recognizing the existing area covered in water in the open space zone. Part of the application includes a holding provision on the zone so that the new residential uses would not be permitted right away. However, they would be permitted once an existing and open aggregate license on an adjacent property to the east is retired. Generally, there are some restrictions that are put on this property, the subject property, for introducing new residential uses, so long as the mining activities on the adjacent property to the east continue. Those activities, through consultation with the applicant, we've learned that they are winding down and may wrap up in the next year or 2. On the screen now is a development concept put forward by the applicant. It's important to point out that this is only a development concept, and a plan of subdivision is not before council for consideration tonight. And in the future, should the official plan policy and zoning regulations be changed, it is likely that a plan would come forward at some future time, and it may be slightly different than this. We've just not got to that point in the planning process yet at this point. However, the official plan policy proposed and zoning that's proposed would facilitate the development of approximately 21 new residential lots along the perimeter of the pond area with a new municipal public road accessed from Talbot Trail. There were a number of comments and questions submitted via email by a neighboring landowner to the east. A number of these questions are technical in nature with regard to road width, construction techniques, elevation changes on the land, and things of this nature. All of these comments are not directly relevant to implementing residential policies and zoning. These are all important questions, and these are technical aspects that will be addressed if these are approved and the landowner moves forward to detailed design of a subdivision. These are all things that would be addressed through the municipal development standards and with further consultation as well. And I believe the applicant's agent is online as well, Mr. Mayor. So with that said, it is recommended that official plan application D09HA0223, being official plan amendment number 76, to designate a portion of the lands from agricultural area to suburban residential area be approved and the implementing bylaw be adopted. As well, that zoning bylaw amendment application file D14HA4223O to rezone a portion of the subject lands into a site-specific holding rural residential zone to permit single detached dwellings and to establish various site regulations be approved and the implementing bylaw be adopted. Thank you.
Council, do you have any questions of administration? Councillor Scotchy?
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Jacques, I did have a chance to send you an email, but unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to read the deputation in detail until after, because when we got it with closed session and that. But you commented on some of the aspects, but essentially, most of the questions, as you indicated, are going to be then coming back in the detailed site plan, right? Because there's a lot of questions that would be difficult to navigate through at this time. But I just want to make sure that the deputation that we received is aware that those questions in technical nature do have to be addressed at the next step if this approval process is. And I know you did touch on that, but I just want to make sure it's very clear that it's not, that we're not listening to these concerns, but really this isn't the time that those technical concerns are addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's correct. Typically, a land developer wouldn't move to that stage of detailed design in that effort until the land use permissions were already in place. So it is a bit premature to do that now. However, I do commit to contacting the neighbor and addressing each point one by one and addressing any concerns over the course of this week. Thank you.
That was actually my next thing on my list. I just crossed off, so I do appreciate that. The only two quick questions I had for you is regards to, they said once it's retired from active use, is there like a time that, is this usually associated with that? Are we talking like months, years? Like how does that process normally take place? Or is this very different to you too, that you haven't seen it that often with something like this?
Yes, thank you. That's a good point. Chatham-Kent generally doesn't have many aggregate pits. However, there are a few, but not as many as might be in central Ontario, for example. Really, that's something that's regulated under a license that's granted by the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. And the terms and conditions of that license are the responsibility of the property owner. And that pit may have life until there is no more aggregate to be extracted. And that is coming up to that point in the next year or so. And at that point, that license holder will be responsible to do any remediation activities as specified under their license with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry.
Thank you. And from a technical standpoint, for something like this, how big does a subdivision have to get before you have to look at a secondary outlet for a road? Is there a number to that, or is it really based on the development aspects?
So the Chatham-Kent development standards that are reviewed when reviewing a subdivision do require that a secondary access be provided after 300 meters of public road before there's a second access. In this proposal, there would be more than 300 meters. So that is a technical element that would need to be addressed at the subdivision stage. And we intend to work with the developer to do that, and also with our partner divisions within the municipality to see the appropriateness of that development standard at this location as well.
Thank you, Ryan, and I greatly appreciate you, even before us asking you, following up with that detailed request that came in, because those are some very technical questions that in a short time I can't pass on to you. So, I am going to support this, knowing that those questions are going to be addressed, and if they're not addressed, we do have the opportunity to address them in the next step of this development. So I do appreciate your diligence in following back up with the deputation. Thank you.
Is there anyone present other than the applicant or the agent with an interest in the application and to indicate so please, by raising your hand? Seeing none, would the
Just
app?
1 second, Mr. Mayor. Is Bonnie Roast here? Yes, please.
Oh, there you
go
are.
for it.
Okay. Please provide your name and address and address council with your comments, concerns, or questions, please.
I'm Bonnie Roost. My husband and I own the land abutting the proposed subdivision. This is a third generation family farm that we bought from here. We had some concerns, as you addressed about the technical, like with the slope of the elevation of the access road and the road in and out. Another aspect we were thinking, we're concerned about is the water, with the sewage. How is that being handled? I imagine that's probably the next stage of development, because this is all land that was gravel that's been dug out. So it's all on, like a gravel pit where these houses will be built, and they're about 20 degrees elevation lower than what the main road is, than Talbot Trail. So it's quite a slope to go down to this subdivision, where this proposed subdivision. There was a question on the top corner of the one concept page. There was, looks like a line coming up through. We're not sure what that was, but it is on our land. It is on 8989 Talbot Trail on the one corner. So I'm not sure if that was for sewage or what they were proposing on that. It's very top right corner on that one, on the concept map. Another concept when we were thinking too was with nature, how it affects, because down there is very prominent with the geese that travel from pond to pond to pond. If they go right through, like if there was a road there, it would be detriment to nature on that aspect. And there's like a bush behind, which has a lot of nature there too. So, and we, like and how we were kind of wondering how the elevation with the road coming down, butting our property, how that would affect it, because we're growing trees there at the present time, and want to make sure things are kept, intact. So, yeah, that's all I can really think of right now. So, but Anthony addressed a few of the other ones earlier there. So, okay. So I thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council for listening.
Council, do you have any clarifying questions you wish to ask the presenter? Councillor Scotchy?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I just didn't know if Ryan could comment on the line that in question. I'm just not really able to find.
I was going to have him comment on anything he's heard, so he'll
Okay,
answer
perfect.
those
That's
questions
perfect. Thank you,
a
Mayor
little later.
Caniff.
Okay.
So they will get back to us on
Yes,
that.
you'll hear his response in a few minutes. I'll have him come back up and he can provide answers or comments.
Okay, sounds good. No. Thank you.
Would the applicant wish to share any comments regarding the report or comments that you've heard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No further comments. Thank you.
Ryan, would you want to go up and comment on anything you've heard?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With respect to one of the comments regarding the conceptual plan, if I could bring council's attention to the drawing. In the upper right-hand corner of the drawing, just to the left of the north arrow, is a line which is across the last speaker, Ms. Roast's property. This line, what this is indicating in concept, is a municipal drain extension for the purposes of conveying rainwater that may fall on a future municipal road through north to an existing open municipal drain. There are no approvals at present for this drain to be established. That alternative would need to go through a Drainage Act process where the adjacent landowner would be involved through that process. However, I am aware that the developer also has other stormwater management options in order to convey rainwater to other municipal drains in the area. But I could assure council that there are no approvals for that drain, and any proposal as such would involve the neighboring property owner through the drainage process. Thank you.
Councillor Doyle and Councillor Scotchy, can I get you to move this, please?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be happy to move that.
I'll second it, Mayor Caniff.
Okay, seeing no other questions, so we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Brock McGregor,
Yes.
Councillor Finn,
Yes.
Councillor McGrail.
Yes.
All votes are in, motion passes 15-0. Our last planning application this evening, application for consent and zoning bylaw amendment, Bayside Homes Limited, 8 Helen Street, Community of Tilbury, West Kent. We have no conflict of interest, and Mr. Mayor, we have received deputations on this report, one by email, and I believe one is present tonight, so I will pass it over to administration for a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The municipality has received 2 Planning Act applications, one for consent to sever a new residential lot and one to rezone the retained parcel of the subject lands. The subject property is a residential property in Tilbury. The property is approximately 58,000 square feet in area and currently contains 1 single detached dwelling with an accessory dwelling unit. I'd just like to point out on the image on the screen now labeled retained parcel, there is a house in the aerial imagery on the subject lands. That particular house has been removed since this imagery was prepared, so that house is no longer there. And there is a new dwelling built inside of that dotted line, which is labeled number 6 Helen Street, and that house is the subject of the severance application to take that house onto its own property of a similar area to neighboring houses. So going back in time just a little bit, in 2019, Council of the Day dealt with this property at a planning meeting. At that time, there were approvals given to sever 2 new residential lots from what was this property at the time. Those residential lots are labeled as number 4 Helen Street and number 10 Helen Street on the image. So since that time, there are also dwellings built on those properties as well. And there are some more recent photographs from about a month ago that are included in the report on Council's agenda tonight. The current proposal, as I said, is to, 1, sever the existing dwelling at 6 Helen Street onto its own lot, and then, which would then allow for the redevelopment of the remaining lands at some point in the future. So the second application, which is the zoning bylaw amendment application, is dealing with a proposal to develop those remaining lands in the future. So the zoning amendment application seeks to rezone the property from low-density residential to a medium-density residential zone that would allow the construction of 2 row house dwelling units totaling up to 18 new residential units at this site, and would establish specific zoning regulations as well that would regulate where those buildings could be located, under what conditions. In reviewing this application over the better part of the last year or two, through pre-consultation up to application submission by the developer this past February, one of the major issues that it needed to be addressed is the existing storm sewer system in the community of Tilbury. As Council is aware, there is a Tilbury Storm Sewer Master Plan that was adopted in late 2021, which identifies a number of capital works that are planned over the next 30 years or so to alleviate, or to start to alleviate some of the existing stormwater conveyance issues that we're experiencing in this part of the community. As well, this was also the main concern, I would say, that was raised by members of the public and neighbors of this property at a developer-hosted open house that occurred last November of 2022. So through municipal review, including the municipal engineering department, it is being recommended tonight to apply a holding category to the remaining lands that are recommended to be rezoned into medium-density residential. That holding symbol or holding category would prevent the development of these lands with 18 units as proposed in concept by the developer until such time certain works have been completed that are identified in the Tilbury Storm Sewer Master Plan. It's the opinion of administration that these works, once completed, would provide an adequate storm sewer outlet for this property, such that this particular property and potentially surrounding properties would not be negatively impacted by flooding, which may be the result should this development go forward as proposed today. Those specific project is the Rose Avenue trunk sewer project. That project's identified as a 5 to 10 year project. It's currently not on the 5-year capital list, and it's currently not funded. So that timeline is only a suggested timeline in the master plan document and would be subject to funding in the future and prioritization over other municipal capital projects as that they got closer. But to clarify, before I wrap it up here, the recommendation tonight would be to implement the medium density residential zone and apply the holding, as well as move forward with the severance that I mentioned earlier for the existing dwelling. This slide here shows a conceptual site plan that has been put forward by the applicant for this project. And this conceptual site plan, again, is not before council or administration for approval at this time. It had been prepared by the applicant to demonstrate the concept and in order for the zoning bylaw amendment application to be properly evaluated. I apologize, it is a little bit difficult to read. However, I'll quickly describe that there would be a single two-way driveway coming south from Helen Street, which would lead to more of a central parking area with space for up to 32 vehicles, and a 9-unit townhome either side of the parking lot down the sides of the property. So at some point in the future, if this is approved, the site plan control or site plan approval would apply, as this is a development with over 10 units. So in sum, this project has been reviewed in the context of the provincial policy statement and Chatham-Kent's official plan, and it is the opinion that this recommendation meets the intent of the official plan and complies with the provincial policy statement. Therefore, it is recommended that consent application file B6323 to sever and convey a new residential lot be approved, subject to the conditions noted in the planning report. As well, number 2, that zoning bylaw amendment application file D14 TI 3723B to implement consent application B6323 be approved and the implementing bylaw be adopted. Further, that zoning application file D14 TI 4523B to rezone the retained lands under consent file B6323 from low density to holding medium density to allow for medium density residential development, including a multiple dwelling, and establish those noted regulations. Once the Rose Ave trunk storm sewer upgrade is completed as set out in the Tilbury Stormwater Master Plan 2021, and until such time the provisions of the low density residential zone continue to apply, be approved, and the implementing bylaw be adopted. Thank you.
Council, do you have any questions of administration? Okay, Judy, we have someone here that would like to do a deputation.
Yes, council, you received an email from Ms. Peach, and I believe Ms. Shaw is here to do a presentation.
Chatham-Kent Mayor and members of council, thank you for taking the time to hear from the residents of Helen Street, Rose Ave, Queen Street, and Laurentia Drive in Tilbury regarding our concerns over the proposed rezoning and development on 8 Helen Street. Many of us are here today, and as a group, we have over 107 signatures on a petition in support of our concerns. There is a flooding issue in Tilbury, which has been identified in the information report with subject line Tilbury Stormwater Waste Master Plan, which stipulates the community of Tilbury experiences localized flooding, which has led to property damage, primarily as a result of basement flooding. According to the report, there are 4 alternatives provided with the conclusion that the preferred strategy include improving the stormwater conveyance system to meet the design standards, including addressing overland flooding locations. The Tilbury South Drain, Laurentia Drive, and the Rose Ave Trunk Storm Sewer are priorities based on the project list contained within this Tilbury Stormwater Master Plan. When you consider that the subject lot is parallel and adjacent to those areas, the potential risk of additionalized localized flooding is very much a possibility. Although the application states that the conditions have been met for restriction on the volume of stormwater entering the storm sewer system along Helen Street, it is evident that it has not been adequately engineered or implemented due to the residual water on Helen Street after each rainfall, which has only appeared since the construction of the 3 new detached dwellings on the severed lots, which is 4, 6, and 10 Helen Street. Today, we are asking our council members to vote against the rezoning and development plan presented by Bayside Homes Limited concerning the property located at 8 Helen Street, Lot 28, until the completion of the Tilbury Stormwater Master Plan. Thank you very much.
Does council have any questions of the presenter? Seeing none, is there anyone else present other than the applicant or the agent with an interest in the application, and indicate so by raising your hand? Seeing none. Applicant, do you wish to share any comments regarding the report or comments that you have heard?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Mr. Pierce, we don't seem to be able to hear you. I can see you on the screen, but I can't hear you. Oh, there you go. There you go, you're good.
Mayor, members of council, how are you this evening? Now that my speaker and my microphone are working, just to address council on this, we've prepared a stormwater management report to support the consent and zoning bylaw amendment before council tonight. If there's any specific technical questions within the report, we'd be more than happy to answer that. But we're supportive of staff's approach to use the holding symbol as a tool to limit development until such time as improvements are completed to the stormwater sewer system within Tilbury.
Ryan, do you have any comments to make?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You have Councillor Doyle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have one quick question. So it says on one of the zone regulations pages that the minimum lot frontage is 25.91 meters, and the proposed is 16.92 meters. So relief of 8.99 meters is requested. Is that something that we would normally do, is go down by 9 meters on a minimum zone regulation for frontage, lot frontage?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, each severance application would be evaluated based on the local context. We take that base zone frontage as a starting point and really look at the development characteristics of the area and what is proposed. And if it is an appropriate width, then we would typically be recommending a reduction. And in this case, that's what we're doing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Anderson and Councillor Story, can each move this, please?
I will put it on the floor for discussion for sure.
Happy to second that, Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Anderson?
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan, for your presentation. And I also want to thank everyone that reached out by email and phone, and Ryan for his continuous phone calls today and previously on this matter. I think that the concerns of the flooding are very real, and we definitely take them very seriously. Through conversations with you, I just want you to clarify a few things. So the suggestion from my constituents is to put a motion forward to postpone the rezoning until the sewer management system is completely completed. Can you just describe what implications that would have, and what options would be available with that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that question really speaks to timing, and I know we discussed timing about this application coming forward to council today, even though we know that storm sewer upgrades will happen over a number of years. And the reason why we're here today is that the landowner has made applications under the Planning Act to the municipality for the purposes of further developing this parcel. So when that happens, the municipality, the municipal administration does have the responsibility to evaluate that application, consult with the applicant and the public, and eventually bring a recommendation to municipal council. Under the Ontario Planning Act, from the date from an application has been received, which in this case was in mid-February, but on any zoning application, the municipality has 120 days to make a decision. Well, it's not bound to that time frame, but after 120 days, anybody who's made an application for a zoning bylaw amendment does have the right in Ontario to appeal what's generally referred to as a non-decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. And that's the situation that we're in today. It's been a little over 120 days since we've received a complete application. So postponing this application indefinitely or for many years does add risk, in my opinion, to municipal council, in that the right to appeal would remain for the developer, and they may or they may not take that. My comment on that would be that just in general, the best decision on a planning matter would be a decision that's made locally, and not one that's made by a judicial tribunal. However, Chatham-Kent, in saying that, does remain committed to working with this landowner on this file and any solutions that may come along in the meantime. Right? So with respect to postponing an approval until such time as the sewer upgrades are done, I would suggest that the recommendation is structured in such a way that the principle of land use is being recommended for approval tonight. However, no construction could take place until those improvements were made. And it is only municipal council that can pass a bylaw to remove a holding symbol. And if all things remain the same, administration would only bring a recommendation to remove the holding symbol if the storm sewer works were completed to the satisfaction of the municipality, with advice from our municipal engineers prior to bringing that forward to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. So would it be essentially safe to say that putting the hold on it is postponing this development?
Yes, I would agree with that.
Okay, thanks. I want to just talk a little bit further about it being up to council to remove that hold. So it's not like this, like the system's going to go in, they're going to say, oh, okay, now you can just start it. It would come back to us.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I want to just say blatantly that I support housing. We need housing for a number of different reasons. This land has been said to be for a development space, and although it was initially for low density, we do have a requirement for medium and high density housing within Chatham-Kent. With that, there's a number of different reasons for that. There's people that mortgage rates have increased and they now can no longer, potentially afford their mortgage, and they need to downsize because of that reason. There's an aging population that are now, their home has outgrown them and they want to get to something smaller to retire in, and there's not a lot of retirement home availability. And also there's families living with their families because they can't afford to have housing of their own. So I see this as a great opportunity to provide housing. I just can't agree with it being done obviously as is. But I think that holding symbol does take care of the concerns, and also putting it on council that we have the final say of moving forward with any sort of development hereafter.
Okay, I've got a few other speakers, Councillor Story, followed by Councillor Sakachi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question's been answered.
Councillor Sakachi, followed by Councillor Pinsino.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff, and thank you, Mr. Jacques, as well, for the phone calls today as well. I have been in contact with Councillor Harrigan through this matter as well, and I know Councillor Anderson has put a lot of time in this, and there's been a lot of discussion. So I'm not going to go back and touch on some of the things that she mentioned, but there was a couple things that I just wanted to address. If the storm sewer is upgraded, and we are coming back to council for approval, I just want to be very clear and precise on this. They still have to perform an exercise from a planning perspective to show that it's sufficient enough to address that property as well. It's not just about they're going to upgrade the system. It also has to do an exercise to that development that says that they're going to be able to get rid of their stormwater. Is that correct?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Yes, that's correct. At that time or around that time, there would be likely an application for site plan approval. And that is really where the municipality requires those technical designs to be prepared by the applicants and submitted to the municipality for approval. And that's when that would happen, yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to make it everyone very much aware that it's not just about upgrading the area. It's also about showing that the system will basically hold this development. And that's something from a council perspective that we'll be looking for, or whoever's sitting around the horseshoe when it comes back. The question I have here is really more maybe towards Mr. Soldo as well, or Mr. McAllister. So we're very much well aware of all the additional building and the demographic changes that's coming with Windsor and some large builds in factories that's going on there. If you just look at the natural benefits to that and, the kind of the runoffs of that, we know that Tilbury is probably going to be an area that a lot of other communities are looking at for growth. I'm just curious to see if there is that appetite and we have more developments like this. What's the potential for us to accelerate, or would that be taken into consideration when we're looking at, our growth strategy, when we're looking at different aspects of, growing, not just from a residential standpoint, but from a commercial and industrial standpoint? Will we be looking at maybe accelerating that in our capital plan? And I wanted to see how that would look from both economic development standpoint as well as infrastructure and engineering.
Thank you, through the mayor, to councillor. In terms of the Tilbury master plan, I believe it was about $30 million worth of improvements overall. And, that is going to be programmed into our 10-year capital budget. But it is a significant amount, and it would have to compete with all the other projects that we have ongoing as well. This trunk sewer main is about $6 million, and that would be about 3/4 of our annual budget in terms of the capital. So it's something that we'll have to look at in the broader terms over the 10-year capital and balance that with all the other projects that are competing against it.
Bruce, go ahead.
Maybe just to add to that further, there's a couple of things that we're working on as well that'll be coming back to council, and I could ask Ryan if he wants to comment further, but we are finalizing our growth forecast and land needs analysis here over the next few months, and that'll kind of depict where we should be investing in terms of what our anticipated growth forecast is going to be over the next, long term, 20, 25 years, and short term. The other piece, the capital aspect of this Tilbury Stormwater Master Plan is included in the capital project listing in our development charge bylaw. So development charges are specifically allocated to fund a portion of the capital costs of the plan works in Tilbury as well.
Thank you. And it is challenging when you have a large group of people that are very much concerned about a very real issue. And I guess it's important for us to know that we have the opportunity still to address these concerns, and that nothing will proceed until it comes back to council. From a time perspective, is there any time estimation? Are we talking 5, 10 years? Like, is that, like, would you have a perspective, Edward? And that might be something, if you're not comfortable, I'm totally okay with that, that answer as well, because I've heard different numbers from different people from an estimate. Is that where we're gonna find that? Maybe, Bruce, is when that report comes back? Because, you know, the last thing too is that I'd hate to see somebody go through this exercise and then we're talking about having to go redo all this stuff in 10 years from a planning perspective, or what that would look like then as well.
Thank you, through the mayor. I believe Ryan did speak to the fact that this is not in the 5-year capital. So right now it's in that 5 to 10 year time frame that we'd be looking at doing that trunk sewer.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff.
Councillor Pinson, and final comments back to Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Ryan, I assume this landowner wants to know whether council supports this concept of developing more properties in the future, and that he's not just spinning his wheels. Personally, I don't have a problem with moving forward, and simply because the age pattern, holding pattern, is going to protect the neighbors anyway. And we definitely need more housing. I'm not gonna repeat anything else that was said, but I honestly think we need to move forward this, show this property owner that we do support the concept of more development, and I don't see a problem with it. Honestly, the H pattern is going to take care of itself.
Councillor Anderson, back to you.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. I just have one more clarification. So even if this goes through tonight, it is still technically zoned low density that they could potentially build now with the sewer system currently there allow for any building to happen right now of a single dwelling.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the question. Yes, as I stated in my presentation, the property today would have the rights for one single detached dwelling, and that right would remain into the future. And if that did come to fruition, then its storm sewer connection would need to tie into a private sewer connection that's been constructed in front of these properties and ultimately tied into our storm sewer. But that system, as it's installed now, would be able to handle one additional dwelling. That's correct.
Thank you. And once again, I just want to thank Ryan and team, and obviously Councillor Sakachi and the conversations that Melissa and I had, and Councillor Harrigan, or Councillor Story, and everyone here tonight, and all of the emails that we, shuffled back and forth. And ultimately, I am comfortable with that holding symbol being there, and really being, the postponement that has been asked for by the constituents. And I think that we've done well standing up to that. So, thank you.
With that, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor McGrail,
Yes.
Councillor Finn,
Yes.
and Councillor Brock McGregor.
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 15-0. Council will now move on to our regular a regular portion of the council. This evening we have no deputations with regards to reports on the consent agenda. So we'll move into the consent agenda at this time. Items that have been pulled are items 15A, the RFP R23-197, the building condition assessment for the energy savings recommendations and 2 accessibility audits has been pulled by Councillor Story. Item 16A, the community improvement plan uptake and community impact, March 2020 to December 2022, has been pulled for a presentation and information report from Gabriel Clark. We have item 17A, the homelessness update. It's been pulled for a presentation by Josh Myers. Item 18A, backyard chicken survey results, has been pulled by Councillor Sakachi. Therefore, the items remaining on the consent agenda for approval in one motion are items 14A, B, items 15B, 16B, 17B, 18B, C, D, Item 19A, 20A, and 21A, B, C, D, E, F, and G.
Councillor Allen and Councillor Finn, can I get you to move the consent agenda, please?
Happy to move it.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Finn,
Yes.
Councillor Brock McGregor,
Yes.
and Councillor McGrail.
Yes.
All votes are in and motion passes 14-0.
We'll move to item 15, tender awards.
15A, RFP R23-197 award, building condition assessments with energy savings recommendations and 2 accessibility audits.
Councillor Story and Councillor Jubenville, can I get you to move this, please?
Happy to move, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
I so second.
Okay, Councillor Story, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to mention, I have a couple of questions which I will save for an email another time, but I wanted to ask our GM, April, as the council representative to the Accessibility Advisory Committee, I just would like to offer our assistance and input if and when appropriate. As this moves forward, I'm happy to see accessibility audits included in this report, and I'd also like to share my appreciation for the DEIJ lens being used in this context, especially as it relates to vulnerable people in our community. So thank you for that.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor McGrail,
Yes.
Councillor Finn,
Yes.
Councillor Brock McGregor.
Yes.
All votes are in and motion passes 14-0.
Item 16, community development.
16A, Community Improvement Plan Uptake and Community Impact, March 2020 to December 2022. We have a presentation and information report by Gabriel Clark, Manager of Growth and Development through Planning Services.
Good evening, everyone. It's been a while since I've been at this podium. Okay, so thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, Council, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak to you about the uptake and community impact analysis we recently completed for Chatham-Kent's Community Improvement Plan program. So over the next few minutes, I will quickly go over Chatham-Kent's Community Improvement Plan to orient everyone about that initiative. I'll touch on the main steps of the Community Improvement Plan Review Project, and then thirdly, I'll review some of the highlights and key findings we extracted from the analysis we recently completed for the CIP Review Project. So starting with what is the Community Improvement Plan? It is a key initiative for growing Chatham-Kent's population, employment base, and tax base, and directly supports Council's growth strategy. In simple terms, the CIP provides a series of grant programs to encourage high priority and sought after forms of development. The existing CIP was approved on March 2nd, so days before the onset of the COVID pandemic, and contains 5 core programs that are listed on the screen, in which I'll briefly review over the next few slides, for anybody who's not familiar with the CIP program. So starting with the Facade Improvement Program, this grant program provides commercial businesses such as downtown retail stores with grants to enhance or renovate the facades of existing commercial buildings. The Building and Planning Fee Rebate Program provides certain developments with grants to cover the cost of building permits and planning fees. The Residential Conversion and Affordable Housing Program provides grants to encourage the construction of 3 priority types of rents. And then finally, the 5th one is called the Property Tax Increment Equivalent Grant Program. And this program provides grants that are equal to the difference in property taxes that are applied to a property after it is developed for a set period of time. Eligible types of development for this grant are listed on the screen. Each grant contains specific eligibility requirements, conditions, and limits that are more detailed than we have time to get into now, but I encourage anyone who might be interested in the CIP to contact our Economic Development Services or Planning Services staff for additional information. So turning to the CIP Review Project, this project was initiated in December of 2022 to ensure that the program continues
to properly incentivize Chatham-Kent's highest priority types of development. The CIP review project involves three main steps. The first step is a numbers exercise focused on tabulating participation rates, community impact, and the financial impact of the grants issued under the existing program. The second step involves scrutinizing the numbers derived in the first step against the goals each program was meant to achieve. And then the third step involves developing recommendations for adjustments to CIP programs to ensure that Council's growth and development priorities are accurately reflected in the CIP going forward. The uptake report that was attached as Appendix 1, to Council's meeting agenda, in which I will now turn to, was created to fulfill the first step of the CIP review project. All right, now for the fun stuff. So key findings from the CIP uptake and community impact report. So this slide shows a general summary of the results that were achieved by the Community Improvement Program between March of 2020, when it was approved by Council, and the end of December of last year. During this time, Chatham-Kent approved 127 individual grant applications worth an estimated total of $18.2 million. The total value of participating developments was estimated at just under $170 million, which represents a private-public investment ratio of 9.3 to 1. So over the next two slides, I'll briefly summarize the results for each CIP grant program that I described a few minutes ago. So under the Commercial Facade and Improvement Program, a total of $590,000 in grant funding was distributed to the 43 grant applications that were received under the Commercial Facade Improvement Program. The average size for the grants that were provided arrived at just under $14,000 each. 33 applications were approved for funding under the Building and Planning Fee Rebate Program. And the average grant provided under this program comes in at just under $12,000. And then under the Residential Conversion and Affordable Housing Program, you'll see that 96 residential units were approved for funding under this program, which includes 41 affordable units, 37 converted dwellings, so those are dwellings that are located in a mixed commercial residential building, and 18 secondary dwellings, which are also known as garden suites, secondary suites, or additional residential units received funding under that program. With the PUC Development Charges Partial Exemption Program, we received 7 grant applications representing an average value of just over $130,000 each that were approved for funding under this grant. And finally, 28 applications were approved for funding under the Property Tax Rebate Program. The estimated total value of these grants is estimated at just over $16 million over the lifetime of the grants that have been approved during the period I mentioned earlier. And this is compared to an estimated total construction value of $117 million for the participating developments. In terms of community impact, the participating developments under the Property Tax Increment Equivalent Grant Program will generate over 25,000 square meters of new or rehabilitated non-residential floor space and 474 residential units in communities throughout Chatham-Kent. This slide provides a quick overview of the funding sources for the CIP. So the CIP is funded annually by a base budget allocation of $734,000 per year. As of December 31st last year, that CIP reserve account held just over $1.2 million in unallocated funding. And then the table on the screen shows the 3 CIP programs that this funding is allocated to, and also how the other 2 CIP programs are funded. In terms of next steps, on Wednesday of this week, we'll be hosting a staff brainstorming session, and then we'll develop recommendations that are informed by our previous work, best management practices from other communities, results from the brainstorming session, and 2 surveys we've previously conducted with CIP participants and the local business community. After this, we'll review the draft recommendations with EMT and bring a final set of recommendations to Council in September for your consideration. And then finally, I thought we could end this presentation by reviewing a couple of development examples that have participated in the CIP. So this development is located on Riverview Drive in Chatham-Kent and includes 142 new rental residential units. This development received funding under the Property Tax Program, as well as under the DC or development charges partial exemption rebate program. And then the final 3 slides I've got for you are all different before and after pictures of commercial buildings that participated in the facade improvement program. So here's a business that took advantage of the grant program that's located in Erio. And then another example of a participant in the community of Chatham. And then finally, a facade improvement program participant located in the community of Dresden. So with that, that marks the end of my presentation. So once again, thank you so much for your time, and I will be happy to answer any questions council may have. Thank you so much.
You must have done a great job presenting, because I don't see any questions. It's exciting that the amount of investment that's generated. But I just want to note that if there was none of that investment, there would be no cost. It's all real. Virtually all of it's related to it happens, so we're doing that. So thank you for the update. Appreciate it. Move on to item 17, Health and Human Services.
Homelessness update. And we have a presentation and information report by Josh Myers, Director of Housing Services.
Good evening. Employment and Social Services has been operating emergency housing since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. Throughout the last 3 years, staff and community partners have dealt with a variety of changing needs and emergencies. Programming has pivoted from focusing on public health priorities to housing priorities, and then back again depending on the year. The goal continues to be to house enough people so that a return to a smaller model is possible, thus eliminating the need for a large congregate shelter. As our report shows, there is no supporting evidence to suggest that this goal will be met in the near future. Those on social assistance or in low-paying work continue to see their incomes decrease. We are losing more affordable housing than what is being created due to gaps in policies and legislation. Wait lists for programming and housing are at all-time highs, and some have given up on trying to access these programs. The following presentation and submitted report will provide an update on what the current local state of homelessness is and what staff believe is yet to come. Chatham-Kent is not alone in this. Municipalities across the country are struggling with this growing crisis and the expectation to solve it while not having the tools, resources, or authority to address the root causes. More Canadians are experiencing homelessness now as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic's continuing effects and a cost of living crisis brought on by high inflation rates. In cities across Canada, there has been an additional increase in shelter use and homelessness since pandemic financial supports have ended. In many cases, this new wave of homelessness is highly visible in encampments and on the street, which is driving significant concerns amongst the broader public. The complete lack of and ongoing decline of low-rent housing options is the single largest barrier to reducing and preventing homelessness. It is close to impossible to reduce homelessness without access to affordable places to live. The Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation is reporting that the average market rent for a one-bedroom unit in Chatham is now $1,283 a month. This is different than asking rents or what we currently see listed. It is becoming more common to see a one-bedroom unit that would have listed for $800 3 years ago now go for $1,500. These increases can be seen across the continuum, with 2 to 4 bedroom units experiencing similar increases. Incomes for low and middle income earners have not seen these types of increases. And those relying on social assistance, their situation is much more dire. The provincial government increased social assistance rates in 2023, but only for those on Ontario disability. The incomes of approximately 2,100 other CK households who rely on Ontario Works have remained the same since before the pandemic. Ontario Works is intended to provide short-term assistance while the individual or family receives the training and supports necessary to enter the workforce or transition to a disability support program. In reality, it is impossible to attend a training program or secure employment when you do not know where you're going to sleep that night. And it takes months, if not years, to be approved for Ontario disability, which of itself does not provide the necessary income to afford Chatham-Kent's average market rent. The growing homeless crisis continues to be reported on daily across the province, and multiple reports of communities expanding shelter services, partly due to the recognition that it will take years to build the necessary housing. Leadership within the sector are actively and publicly discussing what the homelessness crisis looks like and the extreme demand in emergency shelters look like in Ontario. More people are accessing shelters in Ontario than they were pre-pandemic, but with increasing financial pressure to close the doors, the remaining shelters are left overflowing. Despite strong programming and housing placements in Chatham-Kent, new households continue to fall into homelessness and require emergency services. Chatham-Kent, like our neighboring communities, are left with the difficult problem of still requiring an emergency shelter but lack the funding to sustain its operations. Shelters serve a vital need to many, but they are unable to meet the needs of everyone. Some individuals choose not to access shelters for a variety of reasons, while others are restricted because of their behaviors. If someone is unable to couch surf or access shelter, they will commonly camp on private or public property. These are known as encampments, and how municipalities respond to these is growing increasingly complicated. On January 27th of this year, the Ontario Superior Court of Justice ruled against the regional municipality of Waterloo, preventing them from dismantling a large encampment on municipal property that was slated for construction. In the decision, it was determined that removing the encampment was a breach of the encampment's 53 residents' chartered rights. Some areas of note in the ruling were the municipality did not have enough shelter beds for the known homeless population. The complaints from local businesses and neighbors were not sufficient to warrant the removal of the encampment. The municipality was and is paying approximately $80,000 per month for this specific encampment for security and sanitation. Even if the municipality had enough shelter beds for everyone, they would need to be low or no barrier, including accommodations for substance use. Municipalities across the province are grappling with the impacts of this order. Some groups in the community have advocated for Chatham-Kent to sanction encampments as another tool to addressing the crisis. This ruling demonstrates the additional cost that comes with encampments. Whether the site is sanctioned or not, the municipality would be responsible for much of these costs. Lastly, it's important to note that only the federal and provincial government have the authority to provide an exemption allowing controlled substances to be used in a setting. Simply put, Chatham-Kent cannot legally meet this level of service, either within shelter or a sanctioned campground, nor can any municipality in Canada. This ruling has added another complexity to this growing crisis, and once again, municipalities are left to make difficult choices. In CK, ESS is working in partnership with Rock Missions to engage with individuals currently living in small encampments. For some individuals, they are encouraged to access services and come to Victoria Park Place. For others, the services needed are not available, or they are not interested in participating in those services. Employment and Social Services currently receives $3,039,500 from the province to fund homeless prevention programming. This is a 6.7% increase from the previous year. However, it is important to note that although this specific program increased slightly, the Social Services Relief Fund has not been renewed. In total, we are receiving approximately $3,321,000 less in funding this year than we were in 2021, and $1.9 million less than 2022. As discussed in the previous slide, many communities were making plans to increase programming prior to knowing what their budget allocations would be. Some communities like Sarnia-Lambton received significant increases, while others like Ottawa, Stratford, and Chatham-Kent did not. We deliver a number of programs internally or through purchases of services in Chatham-Kent aimed at both ending and preventing homelessness. These programs provide services to over 3,000 CK residents every year and are critical in reducing the number of people falling into homelessness and the number of people actively experiencing homelessness every single month. The attached graph shows the financial costs of preventing homelessness through rent, utility arrears, and rent deposits, and how it has significantly increased in the last 2 years. In 2022, over 700 households received financial assistance to prevent their homelessness, which without assistance would have led to them needing to access expensive services like shelters. As the gaps in upstream programming grow, the cost to services farther down the stream grow as well. In addition to what is received from the province, the municipality is currently contributing $1.9 million from reserves to operate the 24/7 emergency housing program. Chatham-Kent is not a reaching home community, which means that we do not receive any federal funding for homeless prevention. Victoria Park Place is Chatham-Kent's emergency housing program. Since opening approximately 1 year ago, we have provided 15,479 bed nights to CK residents. Staff have assisted over 100 individuals or households with securing long-term housing directly from shelter. 321 households have come through our doors, as well as 35 families and 62 children. The emergency housing program has been focused with the goal of closing the shelter as soon as possible. The reality of the situation in Chatham-Kent is no different than other communities across the province. The need is growing, and municipalities do not have the tools to fix this without higher levels of government addressing the systems that are allowing people to fall into homelessness. It is important to note that the majority of people experiencing homelessness today were not homeless 6 months ago. More than half of the admissions to VPP were with people experiencing homelessness for the very first time. New people are falling into homelessness every single week. Last week, we had 50 admissions, including a record high 11 families with 23 children. 6 households last week were admitted to shelter for the very first time. 3 people over the age of 65 and 1 independent youth. The situation is very fluid. We are, however, seeing individual successes. It is difficult at times to balance the need to demonstrate the growing crisis in the community while also ensuring that we demonstrate the positive work that is happening. Staff and partners are working together to both find housing and provide the supports to maintain the housing. Despite the difficult market and waitlist for programming, we are securing long-term housing for individuals and families and have improved upon previous years. However, we have not returned to pre-pandemic levels. This work is important and allows us to slow the tide of people actively experiencing homelessness in a given month. It is also why administration is not looking to increase shelter spaces. Every week, new households fall into homelessness, while others are assisted with returning to housing or they lose touch with our service system. In order for us to reduce homelessness in the community, we need to help more people leave homelessness than the number of people entering each month. This is not happening, as more people are falling into homelessness than the number we can help return. This screen shows what happened in the month of November of last year. November was an abnormal month in that there was a fire the previous month that resulted in a high number of people returning and entering homelessness. But that said, when looking at 2022 as a whole, approximately 5 more people on average entered a state of homelessness than those who exited. In closing, as noted by the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness and Built for Zero Canada, Chatham-Kent continues to be a leader in housing-focused programming, and based on our per capita comparisons, we continue to demonstrate very strong outcomes with respect to housing. This is what we are funded to deliver, and despite the market, staff continue to find innovative solutions. Our staff and services are having an impact and have helped limit the number of people who are actively experiencing homelessness, but we are unable to address the systems that are acting as highways to homelessness. We need more housing across the continuum in Chatham-Kent, but specifically, we need housing that is targeted at those with the lowest incomes. It is important to note that when we build community and social housing, it comes with a form of rent control under the Housing Services Act. New private builds do not, and this means that the rent can increase in a new building every year to whatever number the owner chooses. We are hearing more stories of community members who sold their home to move into a new apartment and are now being told that their rent is increasing by double digits. There is nothing to stop this from happening next year or the year after. And this means that something that may be advertised as affordable 1 year becomes the opposite the next. To address the need for new social housing builds, administration is making changes to our internal departments to put increased attention on building more community housing and expects to have a number of shovel-ready projects to be competitive for future funding proposals. There is no forecast or data to support the reduction of shelter services in our community. Without an emergency shelter, encampments will grow and will have even less ability to assist people in leaving those encampments than we do now. ESS recognizes that there are a number of different ways to deliver and operate emergency housing programs, and the current plan of relying on municipal reserves is not sustainable. With further budget reductions, ESS will be unable to operate a 24/7 shelter while also completing the work mandated by the province. To address this, administration will be seeking proposals to allow us to consider alternate ways of delivering this service that are better than our current operations. We will then return to council with the results of this RFP and a recommendation to either continue delivering this program municipally or alternatively through a new future partnership. As mentioned in this report, this will be our third attempt at seeking a partner to operate emergency housing, as the other two attempts did not produce a willing or experienced group. Alternate locations will also be reviewed and reported back to community and council with respect to our findings and recommendations. Regardless of delivery partner, there is a need for ongoing operating funding. The costs on municipalities are growing, but not just with respect to social services. Police, fire, building services, road maintenance, and parks are all seeing increased costs as a result of encampments. Homelessness is a policy choice and a result of gaps in upstream services that are intended to prevent this from happening. When the wait list for a community living room is 15+ years, you may become homeless. When there are no ongoing community supports for people suffering from multiple barriers of mental health and addictions. When you have to choose between rent or feeding your children. When you lose your job and your income on social assistance doesn't cover half the rent. When you have no family who can take you and the wait list for a long-term care bed is months long. Or when your affordable rental is sold. These are all reasons where people are becoming homeless every single week. We see these scenarios time and time again, and we will continue to see them until these systems change. Homelessness is increasing, but there are also alternatives to this that higher levels of government can address. Locally, the municipality and our partners who deliver these upstream programs are united in our efforts to improve services, but we must be clear that it will take policy and funding changes to have a large enough impact so that programs like emergency shelters are no longer needed. With that, we'd be happy to take any questions.
Councillor Scotchy?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I think before I really make any comments, I think it's really important to acknowledge the slide that you had there about the successful aspects of this report. The team, yourself, Dr. Redike have done a great job, and to speak to you personally, we've had lots of conversations over the last several months, last several weeks, and I honestly personally couldn't think of someone better to do their position than you. I think that you're a major asset to the organization. And I think it was a very challenging report to read. From my perspective, we had a lot of conversations when this was discussed that we would be seeing a report that would show how we phased out of the shelter. And this is a report coming back to council now that's basically saying the exact opposite. So I got a couple things that I have wrote down here, and they're a little bit all over the place from each department. But this is a very graphic and very concerning report. I haven't never read a report as many times as have I read this, and it really shows the challenges that we are going to be faced in the very near future. Mr. Quinton, if I had to just, these are back of the napkin writings for me, but this past year, our increase was 5.64%, correct? If everything stays exactly the same, and we currently only have around $4.6 million left in this reserve that we're utilizing, this essentially is 2 years left of operations in the shelter at increased costs. If we continue down this path, is this not going to be essentially, we're looking at like a 7.5% increase every year on our taxes assessments? Because $2 or $3 million, if I'm correct, is going to be around 1.6% increase right off the hop. Is that an accurate statement to make?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So of course the municipal budget has pressures from all over, but as many has come to council over the last couple of years, everything seems to be going in the same direction as up, and that's why you know, the report tonight in the presentation outlines one of the many problems that the municipality has and is financially facing, and that property taxpayers are seemingly being forced to pick up the tab. A lot of the issues where you know, we deliver great services with Josh and his team, but I think the big question to consider is who should be footing the bill. Is it taxpayers, or is it upper levels of governments that should be coming to the table with funding to I don't know where the beep is coming from, but for this problem today. So you know, we're just at the start of our multi-year budget process. EMT is actually meeting next week to begin deliberations on putting it together. Where we end up, I don't know, but yes, this is definitely a concern.
Thank you. And is it accurate to say $2 to $3 million there's nothing allocated currently to the budget to operate the shelter? This is 100% essentially being operated from reserves. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So if this becomes an ask,
and that reserve is
dwindling
fast.
And it's is it correct? It's the downturn reserve that we're utilizing, Dr. Reedike? Is that correct?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's correct.
So I think just for the record that we have to be cognizant of the fact that once that's gone, this is going to be fully funded based on our tax assessment, and it's going to be equally challenging to the people who are already marginally struggling with that. Dr. Reedike, I know that the homeless prevention funds that were allocated to municipalities, Mr. Myers touched on those a little bit. I personally reached out to both our MPP's office to find out why we only received a 6.7% increase. Has there been any dialogue in how that funding was formulated with municipalities very similar to us from an unemployment standpoint, very similar to us from a vacancy standpoint, why they've received so much more funds than we have?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have had ongoing dialogue as well, both with our ministry reps and with our local MPPs. They are working to get us an answer to those questions as to, and certainly Josh has spoken about municipalities, even those very closely to our kind of neighbors, receive significant increases in their homelessness prevention funding. And as you've indicated, we did not. I think we received a total increase of about 192,000. Am I correct in terms of that? And that certainly we have expressed multiple times about how that is not enough in terms of any type of sustainability for our homeless prevention programs. We have not received any further information that I'm aware of, unless it came last week. I was on vacation, but I don't think we've received anything.
And this is something that's going to be affecting all our communities here, not just, Chatham proper, but all our communities. In speaking to one of the individuals that operate a food bank in Blenheim, they served 105 meals in one day. 105 meals in Blenheim. And I greatly appreciate the report, Mr. Myers. I know I've had extensive conversations with a wide multitude of staff in the last few days, which I greatly appreciate. I am going to put a motion forward because although I really appreciate the context of the report from a council perspective, I do think that we have to have some action items on here and look at particular costs and what we're looking at. And I want to put the following for voting and discussion on the floor: that administration bring a report, or reports plural, with recommendations for council to consider for affordable housing and emergency and/or transitional funding, whether retrofits of existing buildings or new builds to be started and/or completed within this term of council, with financing plus long-term debenture options and preferred locations potentially on municipality-owned properties by November 6, 2023 meeting, prior to the 2024-2027 multi-year budget deliberations. that the report also include recommended investment and service level options for homeless prevention, emergency response, subsidy and supports, as well as maintaining and increasing supply. And number two, that council and the mayor lobby the provincial and federal governments for increased capital and operating funds to support the obtainable housing needs of Chatham-Kent residents. And just to make sure that I'm clear on the motion, and I worked very diligently with staff, this is not an ask for funds right now. This is so we're not backed into a decision where we were last time, making a midnight hour decision on what to do. The shelter lease expires in around a year and a half, is that correct? Right now, we have council has given you no direction of what we're gonna do. We need to know what it's gonna cost, what it looks like, what the recommendations are, and it's a lot of information to proceed through, and I just think it would be in our best interest to have it sooner than later, so we know what we're looking at from a financial standpoint, and I really appreciate the time on the floor, and if there's any concerns with this motion from staff, by all means, you are the ones that are working very diligently through this. It's just that we have some very, very big decisions to make, and I think the more time to make those decisions, the better, because I have a very big suspicion that it's going to cost us a lot of money, and council needs to be, know the recourse of the consequences of those asks, and that's all my comments for now. Thank you.
Councillor Hall, will you second that motion?
Yes, I second it.
Any questions regarding the motion? Okay, thanks for the presentation. Councillor Story?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. I had some questions, but not on the motion.
Oh.
I apologize.
Oh,
I wasn't
sorry.
sure when
Yeah,
I was,
we'll
wasn't
back
sure when I
up.
was supposed to raise my hand there.
Yes, we'll deal with the questions.
Okay, thank you. I thank Councillor Sakachi for raising a lot of the questions and concerns that I had. I think it's really important we get this on the record, especially about the SSRF funding. I think that's totally unacceptable. These numbers are staggering. These are staggering numbers. And I want to thank you and the team for continuing to raise this alarm and bring this to our attention. These reports are so tough to hear. But we need to keep hearing them. I would have you back here every single week to tell us what you and your team are facing, to reinforce to us that this is an emergency we're facing in our community. The public awareness campaign that you are doing with your team online every week is extremely helpful. I share those on my social media channels, and they always get a great deal of interest from our community. But this is a local, provincial, and national crisis, and municipalities are being forced to carry this responsibility almost entirely on our own, and it is completely unacceptable. And we must continue to advocate in every possible way, every possible avenue, through our provincial and federal representatives, as Councillor Sakachi mentioned, through our membership in Roma. We have a representative there with Councillor McGrail, at AMO, which many of us will be at this summer, through our membership in the National Advocacy Group, FCM, where I will bring this to our next board meeting in September, and everywhere else that we possibly can, because this need is growing. And these are not people being bussed into our community. These are our friends, our neighbors, perhaps even our family members. And what really struck me in the report on page 3 was the research that you shared about the study done just last year about 1% increase in rent relative to income leads to a 2% increase in people experiencing homelessness. And did you not say that our rent increases here are 86%? They went, what, 86%? I think that's one of the first slides. Like that is sorry, I don't want to put you on the spot. I think it was 86%. Either way, that is a ridiculously large number. So if we use that study, that our rent increases have gone up 86%, and there's a 2% increase for people experiencing homelessness, does that mean we'll have a 172% increase in homelessness based on that type of formula? Do you trust that research that you shared in that report? That's a staggering number.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the question, and thank you for pointing that out. I'd be hesitant to say that I would completely trust it to the point of, like, I could give you a number on what we are seeing from a homelessness perspective, but I can certainly share from our experience and what we're seeing with our by names list and what we're hearing from outreach groups is that it is growing, and it's growing significantly. I think one of the bigger difficulties that we're having with respect to that by names list and the data we get from homelessness is people are giving up in accessing those services, because when you only get $700 a month and the closest thing to rent is $1,200, if the wait list for a portable housing benefit or a rent supplement is significantly long, and they are, the options become less and less.
And right now that's 15, did you say 15 years?
No, sorry, that was with respect to a community living.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. All I will say to wrap up, Mr. Mayor, is that when this comes back to budget this fall and beyond, I hope we can remember this discussion, this report. I agree with Councillor Sakachi. This was a tough read. This was a tough read. This is in many cases literally a life or death situation, and I don't think anyone here probably likes what we've seen tonight, but we certainly need to hear this. We share the significant concerns about the funding required to keep our community members safe, and we neglect funding this at our peril. We will see this back at this council table in other contexts if we don't fund it. So it's time for the province and the federal government to come to the table and step up, and I thank you and your team for continuing to bring this emergency to our attention. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions for the presenter, and then we'll go back to the motion as far as dealing with that. Go ahead, Councillor McGrail.
So as we're talking about the subject here, I just want to ask a question about the Federal Housing Accelerator Fund. Have we applied for this, and could we use this money towards funding some of this housing we're talking about tonight?
Address that. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor McGrail. Ray Harper, who's not here tonight, is working diligently right now to finalize that application and to put our best foot forward in terms of receiving some of those funds. So I can have him update council as to where he is in that process, if that would be helpful. But it is certainly on our radar, and we have a group of folks working on it.
And this would be this fund would help access money for us to maybe build for the geared to income or affordable housing.
So Ray is just messaging us. He's watching online, and of course, right? And he's working on the application. The application is due mid-August, so they're working on it right now.
But I guess, this is funds we could use towards builds that we're talking about tonight.
That I can't answer. I don't have the specifics of the actual application in front of me right now. Councillor McGrail, we can get that information out.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so very much.
I just had a couple of comments, and I'll go to Councillor Hall, who has some points to make regarding the motion. I think I'm going to reiterate a couple of points here that we need the federal provincial governments to step up. We have so many costs being downloaded right now. Like, you look across the board, homelessness is costing the municipality a lot of money. And when I look at the housing that we just approved, 9.4 million or something there, that's an investment. That will save us money, but we can't do it alone. And we need the federal provincial government to step up in a big way. And every group that we're part of that lobbies the provincial and federal governments, that's their number one priority right now. Everywhere I see homelessness, addiction, those issues are the number one. So I'll reiterate again, the federal and provincial governments need to step up here, because we cannot do this at a municipal level we can't keep putting out 9.4 million and all the costs, 2 to 3 million to run the shelter, and the cost of all the other services we provide are going up, and because of that. So just want to reiterate that again. And so we'll go to the motion. Councillor Hall, you had some questions or comments regarding
just Just a couple comments, I guess, and a quick question for clarification. I won't reiterate what you just said, Mayor Caniff, and Councillor Story said before, and Councillor Sakachi about lobbying the provincial and federal government. You know, I remember April shared, when Josh was speaking, and April shared that stat with us, I think a few weeks ago, and when some of our neighboring communities are getting a lot bigger of a percentage than we are. That's really that's disheartening and concerning. And I agree with Councillor Sakachi that this was a tough read, and it's hard to hear some of these stats, but it's a reality in our community that we at this table and this our administration need to deal with, and we're going to deal with it. Just a question. I appreciate Councillor Sakachi's motion here. I like the first bit, but I just want to clarify. I know, Josh, you mentioned that there was a report that you were working on that you're going to be bring forward to council. I guess I just want to make sure that give you the opportunity to speak to this this motion. Make sure that and maybe Michael or April, if you want to chime in it too, that aligns with the work that's already happening. It's not overlapping anything or contradictory to, I guess, the direction we're going already.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your question. This would align with the work that we're doing and would help us to position for the other report to council.
That's perfect. I just wanted to clarify. So thank you, and thank you to Councillor Sakachi for putting this forward.
Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you, and through the mayor, and thank you for bringing the motion, Councillor Sakachi. It's item number 2, council lobby the provincial federal government for increased capital. I think that is an absolutely excellent idea, but I think it could be better defined on how we lobby. And I would wonder if you would maybe entertain a friendly amendment that council work with administration to create a plan to lobby the provincial and federal governments so that we have a solid plan in place that all councillors know how to work with, and so that wherever we are, you know, I'm often in public health meetings in Toronto and have the ear of people. I know Councillor Story and many other when we go to conference, but I think if we all had a plan in hand and we were all walking to the same tune, that I think we could have a stronger voice. They hear so many councillors and so many municipalities that lobby here and there. So I think you have to have a really strong tactic to it, and I guess pulling in our MPPs and our MPs and let them know what this plan is and that we're not going to give up. We're going to have to fight, and we're going to have to be heard, because if we don't stand out and we're not heard, we will be bypassed.
That actually is more than friendly, Councillor McGregor. I was even contemplating doing like a multitude of council and administration, almost like a task force, a lobby task force. If you want the wording changed, I'm 100% for that. I'm for anything that we can do to better the advocation and better the potential for our community to get recognized. And one question to you, Dr. Reed, like, because we've done so well, do you and I don't want to say well as in we are doing a good job, but is that a reason why we are being potentially, the funding's not there because we've tried to limit those? Because I 100% agree with Councillor McGregor, but I still can't understand why the funding that so many people got so much more than us, it does not make any sense to me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's a tough question to answer. We wonder probably every day ourselves in terms of what were the data points used, what were the numbers used, have we entered data incorrectly or some way to try and get answers as to how funding has gone to other municipalities and has not come to Chatham-Kent. We have wondered, have we done such a good job in terms of sheltering our homeless that the larger upper levels of government think we don't need the funding? But I can assure council that we have shared with our MPPs that we in fact do need additional funding in order to take care of our really vulnerable people in this community, that we just don't we don't understand it any more than council understands it. And so we will continue to ask the questions, and we will gladly work on a plan to continue to lobby for additional funds to support our most vulnerable.
Councillor C. McGregor, is this what you were contemplating here as far as the change? Or is there anything?
And yes, that does cover it. I know Councillor Sakachi mentioned a possible, a committee or whatever, but I think even to start with even a committee of the whole, where we could have open discussion amongst council and councillors would be a really good place to start, so.
Yeah, so that's good with you. Councillor Hall, the amendment's good with you as well?
Yes, for sure.
Okay. Any other questions relating to this? If not, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Finn?
Yes.
Councillor Brock McGregor?
Yes.
And Councillor McGrail?
Yes.
All votes are in and motion passes 15-0.
On to item 18, corporate services.
18A, backyard chickens survey results.
Councillor Sakachi?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I just wanted to take the opportunity to recognize all the thousands and thousands of people that brought their concerns forward. To keep the conversation, since we've already received so much public consultation, I just wanted to put another motion forward. And basically, I'll just read it here, because it is just an information report. Madam Clerk, I can just put this forward now, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Sure. So whereas administration has prepared a lengthy report on backyard chickens and held public consultation sessions through CK Let's Talk and a public meeting where there was a wide range of comments for consideration, whereas the avian flu is a concern locally and across Canada, and whereas the animal control contract is up for renewal in March of 2024, and a request for proposal will be posted in late 23, early 24, therefore be it resolved that Council direct administration to bring back a report in the spring of 24 with costing associated to a backyard chicken program for all of Chatham-Kent. This report should include several options for a program with different levels of enforcement and regulations, include an update from public health on the avian flu and other related matters to backyard chickens. In addition, the report will include options of different ways to implement a backyard chicken program, including status quo. Administration shall recommend one of these options suggested to Council within the report, and Council to direct administration to include the following recommendations for consideration in the new RFP to be posted in late 2023, early 2024 for animal control services, include separate costing options for different levels of enforcement should Chatham-Kent implement a backyard chicken program. This will assist with understanding how much a program will cost and when Council votes on the report in spring 2024. And if I get a seconder, I'll just say some brief comments, Mayor Caniff.
Councillor Jubenville?
Yes, I will second it.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I think that, I know that a lot of people in the public probably won't appreciate the comment, but I think that just moving forward or saying yes or no right now is premature. There's too much variables when it comes to costing, as well as, a lot of variables when it comes to enforcements and all that. Not often would I say to people if they, not to support my motion, but there is some staffing time, in this motion. I just don't think that we're at a spot right now with the avian flu, with a lot of the concerns, that we should just say yes right now. I think we need to have all the information in place. But at the end of the day, if Council is just very much adamantly not going to support this regardless, it's probably best for them to vote no now. But I think this gives us an option to look at the costs, look at if administration will recommend it. And at the end of the day, by supporting this, the report could come back to Council that administration just says status quo, it's not recommended, and move forward. And that will give us basically a tangible direction to support and cost associated with that. So I'll leave it at that. At the end of the day, by approving this motion, it's not saying we're going ahead with backyard chickens, but it is going to say that we're going to have informations that we could make an educated decision or support the recommendations of administration.
Councillor Jubenville?
I would like to make a friendly amendment, if Councillor Sakachi would be so inclined, to, when the report comes back, to also include information regarding having a pilot project of some sort when the report comes back. Thank you.
Mayor Kenneth, yeah, just as long as it says, because there's not an actual direction, as long as it would say consideration of a pilot program and costs associated with that, I'm okay with that. Because at this point, the recommendations might very well be to not proceed at all, and then we're at least able to provide direction then. So I'm okay with that being one of the directions that we do look at, yes.
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. This doesn't have to be added, but I just want to sort of put it out there. I was thinking just as an idea, because we're talking about the costing of this thing, if it does come back as a recommendation to go forward to it, I just kind of had this notion that maybe we could apply like a permit fee to do this. You know, we pay for dog tags, right? So we get chicken tags, not chicken tags, but you know, like a permit. I just think I read a lot of the comments, and there's a lot of them. And one of the underlying things was that, you know, people will do it and they won't take care of them, and it'll just be a fluky thing that people will try. Well, if they have to pay some money to do it, then I think people would just take it more seriously. So just an idea to put it out there. It doesn't have to be included in anything. I just want to put it out there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Bondi, we did hear that at the public meeting, and it is something that administration has thrown around with regards to how we could offset costs. So that will definitely be included in the report that comes back.
Okay, great. You're way ahead of me. Thanks.
Councillor Doyle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree that there should be some sort of cost aspect, because we're going to have a cost that we have to take care of as well. So, and I don't know if this would make it easier as well, but so say somebody, is it possible to have somebody, if there's a bylaw in place and they want to have chickens and there's a permit that they have to use, that they have to go in and actually sign that they understand the bylaw? So the bylaw could kind of have a description of all the rules that there is, and if these people sign that they understand them, then they get like a 3-strike process. First strike is a warning, second strike is a fine, third strike, we take your chickens and you don't get them back. Is that something that you could possibly put in a bylaw?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Definitely that's something that we can look at when we do the reviews of all the other municipalities, to bring back a report if that's what council wishes. And definitely, I have seen some applications that other municipalities have used where people have signed to say that they agree that they've understand the rules of the bylaw. Whether they do or not is another story, but yes.
I guess my thought was if they signed, and there's a legal document there that they signed, it's going to be easier to actually take the chickens away. Legally, I would think.
Okay. Okay, closing comment, Councillor Scott.
Just wanted to make one closing. I wanted to recognize Nancy on that. This was a lot of taken, a lot of comments, and I just really appreciate your time and all the conversations to try to get this right. If we do go forward, I think it's very prudent that we did a lot of research, and it's not just a yes or no without looking at exactly what's going to happen and exactly the cost. So thank you very much for all your diligence on this one.
With that, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor Brock McGregor,
Yes.
Councillor Finn,
Yes.
and Councillor McGrail.
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 11-4.
We'll move on to notices of motion. Councillor Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, Ryan Doyle, will bring the following notice of motion forward for discussion and voting at the August 14th meeting. Whereas the municipality has approximately 1,785 kilometers of gravel roads that require resurfacing on average every 3 to 5 years, depending on traffic volume and maintenance demand. And whereas 525 kilometers of gravel roads are resurfaced on an annual basis at a cost of $4.5 million. And whereas the application of dust suppressants and gravel roadways within the municipality is a critical component of gravel roadway maintenance at a cost of $1.4 million. And whereas the number of complaints and requests for service on gravel roads is increasing, that administration be requested to develop a long-term plan for gravel roadways that includes the prioritization of upgrades to surface treatment or pavement for roadways that are a key connector where the traffic volumes meet the requirements, and that a project funding for the gravel roadway conversion program be brought forward to council consideration through the 2024 multi-year budget process.
Move on to closed session reports. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I have two reports for tonight. Closed session report from Monday, June 26th. Absent was Councillor Harrigan. Council directed administration on advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege and a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on by the municipality with regard to the downtown Chatham Centre development, Section 239(2)F and K of the Municipal Act, and Council received information on a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of a person, group, or person's organization with regard to waste to energy project, Greenfield Global Incorporated, Section 239(2)I of the Municipal Act. And the and the following item was postponed. Proposed acquisition of land by the municipality with regard to properties in Wallaceburg, Section 239(2)C of the Municipal Act. And closed session report from today, Monday, July 10th. Absent were Councillors Bondi, Crew, Harrigan, and Thompson. Council directed administration on proposed acquisition of land by the municipality with regard to properties in Wallaceburg, Section 239(2)C of the Municipal Act. And Council received information on potential litigation, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, and a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on by the municipality with regard to contract performance issues, Section 239(E)F and K of the Municipal Act, and a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on by the municipality with regard to downtown Chatham Centre development update, Section 239(2)F and K of the Municipal Act. Those reports are so moved. Mayor Caniff.
A+ on the reading. Councillor McGrail, can I get you to second that, please?
You sure can. I'll second it.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Non-agenda business. Councillor Story.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I just wanted to congratulate the organizers of a great conference this weekend called She Leads. Over 100 women from across Chatham-Kent shared ideas and information and all sorts of wonderful presentations. Randy Boker-Karen and Aaron Tewinkle and Elizabeth Suni did an amazing job, and I also want to give a shout out to the staff at the Capitol Theatre who were wonderful hosts. It was just a really inspiring and empowering day, and I hope they will continue to do their great work across our community. Thank you.
Councillor Scotchy, followed by Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. This week is Cherry Fest. I think it's the 40th anniversary in Blenheim of Cherry Fest, 13th, 14th, and 15th. John Paul Huggins, the organizer, wanted me to formally invite any members of council to take place in the Cherry Spit competition that Mayor Caniff, as the delegate, has certainly held the champions for so far. But anybody that wants to come out and spit for the Cherry Spit, he said you are all invited.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. I just wanted to give a shout out to the Tilbury Canadian Tire. They made a massive donation of shrubs and plants and flowers to both the Wheatley and the Tilbury Horticulture Society. So I wanted to thank them for that donation. Much appreciated.
Councillor Juvenville.
I just want to invite everyone out to the this Saturday from 9 until 3 to the Mitchell's Bay Antique Car Show. So everybody's welcome.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. This is a little bit out, but we're not meeting until the middle of August, so I'd like to invite everybody out to Wambo, second weekend in August, which is the 11th, 12th, and 13th. So come on out to Wallaceburg, see some antique boats and cars, and there'll be entertainment and a refreshment tent and lots of fun. So come on out to Wallaceburg, second weekend in August.
Councillor McGrail.
I'm good. Rhonda has me covered.
Okay, we'll go to the first, second reading. Councillor Pinsino and Councillor B. McGregor. Can I get you to move?
So moved.
Okay, Councillor Wright, can I get you to second that, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Seconded.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Third and final reading. Councillor Bondi and Councillor C. McGregor.
So moved.
Seconded.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Resolution council in closed session adjournment. Councillor Hall, and I'll get Councillor Story to wrap it up for us tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I move that Chatham-Kent Council adjourn to its next meeting to be held on Monday, August 14th, 2023, and that Chatham-Kent Council authorize itself to meet in closed session on that day to discuss any matters permitted by the municipal acts.
Happy to second.
Anyone opposed at closing at 8:31? Hearing none, it's a done deal. Thanks, everyone.